Friends, welcome. This is the last of our series in Lent, where we have been exploring the different ways people pray, what helps us to pray, and perhaps we have discovered new ways of praying and deepening our relationship with God. This weekend, we accompany Jesus through his suffering and death on Good Friday. We experience the waiting and the silence of Holy Saturday, and eventually glimpse the first light of Easter Sunday, that dawn of new life and resurrection. This week, I had a conversation with Archbishop Jonathan Blake from the Open Episcopal Church, who shares with us something of his own prayer life and reflects on how prayer resources us to live as Easter people, people of the resurrection. But first, Good Friday. Many of us on this day will walk the stations of the cross, or walk a walk of witness through our own towns or cities. I like the walking experience. It helps me to embody my prayer. But praying the Stations of the Cross in the UK was a very different experience to walking the narrow and bustling streets of the old town of Jerusalem, where I have walked the Via Dolorosa many times. This is the route of the old city of Jerusalem that Jesus would have taken, forced by the Roman soldiers, on his way to his crucifixion. The winding route to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is a place of pilgrimage and prayer for the Christians who walk it. But for many of the locals or disinterested tourists, it's just another day. I was kind of outraged by the hustle and bustle of everyone the first time I walked this route. I wanted to shout out to everyone, "Be quiet, show some respect. Can't you see I'm praying?" But I was reminded that my experience may have been pretty similar for Jesus. Many would have taken no notice of yet another Roman procession with another person off to be crucified.
Every person on this planet has been to a place of despair. Every person has met, in a sense, their personal Good Friday. They've been to the Good Friday of their loved ones. They can see the Good Friday all around them, out playing in the world in which we live. We weep and are heartbroken at what we see happening and the injustices that are happening. This is reality. We don't need something artificial happening in church. It's happening all the time. People cannot look at it. They can, in a sense, just have their McDonald's lifestyle, as it were, and not engage with what's happening. But if they engage with the reality of life, the Good Friday is all around them, constantly available. And the mandate for the Christian is not to be so crushed by that despair and suffering and negativity and pessimism that they basically give up, which is what many people do. They surrender to evil. The mandate of the Christian is to say, I'm not shirking, I'm looking face on at this depth of suffering, and I'm not frightened of it, because with Jesus, I'm going to go to hell. I'm willing to go to hell. I've been to hell myself personally, and I'm going to go to my community and my friends and my loved ones and my strangers and the world. I'm going to go to hell because I know we can get to heaven. We can rise beyond that. And with that message of hope and healing and empowerment, the resurrection message that we have, we carry that to the world. And daily we carry that to the world. In every decision we have to make, how am I going to bring that resurrection this afternoon, this evening, to this situation, to what's happening in the Ukraine, to what's happening in the suffering parts all over the world? How am I going to live resurrection, invite resurrection, celebrate resurrection? If I look back in my own life, I think it's been an extraordinary pilgrimage through what prayer actually means. And in the very early stages, it was a very engaged form of living, a living expression of a conversation I was having with God. I remember as a young Christian, when Easter week was coming up, not having really got into all the traditions of the church, wanting to make sense of it for myself, and going into the forest and finding two great big fallen branches of wood and making a makeshift cross, and then thinking I had as a witness to carry this cross from where I lived on the outskirts of Sheffield into the centre of Sheffield as a pilgrimage, as the Via Dolorosa, the way of the cross, but lived out in a modern city, going along the road with all the traffic and the buses, looking askance at what on earth this young man was doing. So putting it into practice in a very tangible way for myself, and making that a visual reality for the community around me. But that was when I was a very young Christian, and now many years on, and looking through all the different things I've done through the decades to mark Easter, it's been a pilgrimage. I think at base, prayer is very natural. It has to be and should be instinctive. It's a conversation. It's a natural conversation, just as we have with the people we love and the people we grow up with and our people in our community. It can't be forced. The minute it becomes forced or stilted, something's gone wrong with it. It's become contaminated by perhaps other people's expectations or even what we've been taught about it. So prayer essentially is a conversation with oneself and within oneself and beyond oneself about oneself and the world, and one's engagement with the world and the life one has uniquely, and how that is going to play out in this one chance we've got to breathe and to make our mark in the years that we spend here. And in that sense, I think prayer isn't about saying, well, I've got to go through this ritual, I've got to say these words, otherwise God won't be satisfied with me. It's nothing to do with that at all. It's saying we live in a difficult world, an evil world, where we are bombarded by bad things. In order to be able to cope with that and withstand that, we need, in a sense, to bathe ourselves in all the things that are good and nourishing and edifying and inspiring. Prayer is about your conversation, natural conversation, loving conversation with God and with oneself and with life. And that's a continual process in the shower, at the breakfast table, on the loo, out in the street, in our work, in our day, in our rest, in our sleep, all the time, 24/7. It's a conversation. And I think as I've gone through my pilgrimage, from first as a young student carrying that cross through the streets of Sheffield to all those elaborate practices I talked about in Holy Week to now, I think what I feel is, what I've been learning is to make every cell of my body, every part of my heart, every part of my soul, every thinking moment, one with this expression of a desire to be loving, to be just, to be good, and to learn how to do that, making all the muddles and mistakes that we do and learning from those and trying to become the best by a conversation that's continually happening, that will help me and teach me and assist me in that process. I think it's important on a journey that each individual takes, that they don't sort of cast criticism or suggest one way is shouldn't be done, because everybody's got to follow their unique journey. But on my unique journey, having, as you've heard, given absolute commitment and passion to that, and it was an extraordinarily important part of my devotion annually. But comments that people have made over the years to me and my own reflections, I think, brought me to a point where I had to ask myself, this concentration that I was actually giving in the year and in the week and in the ritual to the experience of Jesus, I questioned why I was doing it. Was it for myself? Was it for God? Was it for Jesus? Was it for goodness? What was actually the motivation behind it? And I think that self-questioning is a part of what the process of prayer is meant to be. It's meant to be driving you to think deeply, plumb the depths of your own understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it, question your motives, and not to let yourself off the hook, be ruthless about that, because otherwise one's not taking a journey towards truth. And I came to the point where I thought that this rhythmical experience of engagement with suffering and the deep celebration that we could rise beyond that to liberation and to healing was not actually contained in the experience of that sort of observance of Holy Week and that sort of cyclical practice. It was actually meant to be teaching us, educating us, guiding us to incarnate that into our lives and our practice. That the whole experience of spiritual prayer and meditation wasn't about something external that we were, in a sense, trying to do to God through our act of devotion, or that we were needing to do in order to satisfy God by our repetitive rituals. It was something that should be happening within us to evolve us, so that we became more concerned for justice, more concerned for the people who are suffering, more mandated to know that if our lives were going to be as they should be under God, they had to be actively involved in helping and healing and changing and reforming the world. But in a sense, prayer was our reflection about what we should be doing, how we should be doing it, and then resourcing ourselves to be able to do it. And that shouldn't be something that happens in a week, in a day, on a Good Friday or an Easter Sunday. It's literally happening in totality every moment we are living, if we've, in a sense, bathed ourselves in prayer enough to get us to that point. And even then, we are traveling on beyond to other points, because the pilgrimage never ends.
So friends, as always, you are invited to join in the prayer challenge, which is really just an invitation to give it a go. Give this way of praying a go. So I asked Jonathan if he was to give us a prayer challenge for Easter Sunday, what would it be?
Find Jesus in, and if you want to make it personal, in somebody or some community who has suffered outrage today, who's bleeding today, who's suffering today. Find them in the news or through one's own research. Find out everything you can about them. Let your prayer be to really get involved in the knowledge about that person or their community or their family, what they're going through now. And let your resurrection be, as you go through that on Holy Saturday, thinking, what on earth can I do to assist this situation, this community? What's God wanting me to do, in a sense, to bring salvation here? How can I raise this situation from the tomb to the light? And then on Easter Sunday, saying, right, this is my action plan. Evil is not going to defeat me, nor this family, nor this situation, because I'm going to do this in response to it. And of course, what I'm doing may not solve the whole thing, but what it does is it lights the candle in the darkness. It affirms the fact that there can be goodness beyond evil. And it shows me that I'm an active proponent of that goodness. I'm Jesus's hands and heart and eyes and mind in the world today. He's alive because he's alive in me and in you and in all those good people who are doing that in the present day to people suffering. That to me is, in a sense, living Holy Week as it should be lived. It's living it not in church. It's living it not with ancient prayers. It's living it not by looking at the Jesus of the past. It's looking at the Jesus of the present and living it in one's actions today.
And all that remains for me to say is that I wish you all a very blessed Easter. Christ is risen indeed. He is risen. Alleluia. Amen.
Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou?
Sir, if thou have borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away.
Mary. Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father.